The night began like any other in Atlanta. Quiet on the surface, but carrying that familiar tension that seems to follow the Frost household wherever they go. People were already whispering earlier in the day that something felt off. Kirk had been unusually quiet during a shoot. Jasmine had disappeared for hours without telling the crew. And Rasheeda kept checking her phone as if waiting for a message she already feared would arrive. By the time midnight approached, the streets were still, but the air felt heavy, almost as if the city knew trouble was coming. No one expected the drama that would unfold outside a dimly lit parking lot on the edge of town. Yet that was exactly where everything broke open. A single fan caught sight of two familiar figures stepping out of a black SUV and walking close enough to raise every suspicion that had ever followed them. As the fan moved closer, the shapes became clear. It was Kirk. And it was Jasmine. Together. At midnight, whispers turned into alarm as the two stood near the car, speaking in low voices that carried a kind of urgency that did not sound like a simple conversation. The fan who witnessed it described Kirk glancing around with the restlessness of someone who knew he was not supposed to be there. Jasmine leaned in, speaking quickly, her arms folded across her chest while she tried to keep her voice steady. There was no crew, no lights, no managers, only the two of them standing too close for comfort beneath a flickering Moments later, another pair of headlights swept across the scene. A car pulled up hard enough for the tires to bite the pavement. The door flew open and Rasheeda stepped out. Her expression was tight, her jaw set, her eyes sharp with the cold clarity of a woman who already knew the answer but needed to hear it spoken out loud. The fan said she walked forward with slow and deliberate steps, each one loaded with a mix of anger and disbelief. Kirk froze. Jasmine's face drained of color. Rasheeda did not raise her voice at first. She simply looked at them, both of them, with a stare heavy enough to silence the whole street. The tension grew until it felt like the entire block was holding its breath. When she finally spoke, her voice cut through the stillness with absolute precision. "So this is where you two meet now." Those few words were enough to crack the night open. Fans are shocked as the confrontation begins in the middle of the empty lot. Emotions ran high as the three of them faced each other without a single place to hide. The family was left divided from the moment Rasheeda stepped out of that car. And nothing that followed would be simple. What happened next turned the quiet midnight into a storm no one could escape. The moment Rasheeda stepped out of the car, the whole scene tightened as if the air itself had pulled in. Kirk stood near the SUV with the stiffness of a man who had been caught between two choices and somehow managed to disappoint both. Jasmine shifted her weight from one foot to the other, trying to mask her worry with a calm face that was already starting to crack at the edges. The street lamp above them flickered again, throwing short bursts of light over their faces, making every twitch and tremble more obvious. Rasheeda walked forward slowly, each step steady enough to let both of them know she was in full control. Even though the fire inside her chest burned with a heat she had not felt in years, Kirk lifted his hands slightly, not sure if he wanted to explain or defend himself. Jasmine kept her eyes low. The silence lasted longer than any of them expected. Even the city noise seemed to fade away. When Rasheeda finally spoke, her voice was calm in a way that made the moment more chilling. She asked Kirk why he was here, why Jasmine was standing beside him at midnight, and why she had to find out through a fan instead of her own husband. Kirk tried to answer, but the words tangled in his throat. Jasmine opened her mouth to help him, but Rasheeda raised her hand gently, and Jasmine froze. "I want to hear it from him," she said. Kirk swallowed. He said it was about a message he received earlier in the evening. Something Jasmine needed to talk about privately. Something he believed could not wait until morning because it involved their son. When he said the word son, Rasheeda's expression changed faintly, not softer, but sharper, as if the mention of that one word had reminded her of every hurt she had carried from the past. Kirk tried to explain that he did not want to hide anything. He said he told Jasmine they could talk briefly in public so nothing looked suspicious. But the story already sounded weak, and he knew it. Jasmine stepped in then, her voice barely above a whisper. She said she had reached out because she heard a rumor from someone close to the family, claiming that Kirk had made comments about her behind her back. She said she did not want drama and only wanted clarity. She said she chose the parking lot because she did not want cameras or producers twisting her words. Rasheeda stared at Jasmine long enough to make her shift again. Then she asked one question. "Why midnight?" Jasmine hesitated. Her answer came slow. She thought Kirk would be less stressed and more open late at night. She thought he would meet her safely without sparks. But instead, it caused the explosion she feared most. As they stood facing her, Rasheeda felt something cold and steady settle inside her. She told Kirk that once again he chose secrecy over transparency, and even if his intention was harmless, The timing and the place made it look like the same old pattern. Kirk insisted it was not. He stepped closer, lowering his voice, trying to keep the calm in his tone. He said he understood how this looked, and he understood how much pain the past still cast over them. He said he should have messaged her first, told her exactly where he was going, and asked her to join if she wanted. He said he messed up. Jasmine nodded faintly, agreeing with him, but the gesture only deepened Rasheeda's frustration. Rasheeda asked Jasmine why she did not call her directly if the matter involved her marriage. Jasmine's eyes tightened. She said she thought reaching out to Kirk was more respectful because the rumor was about him. She said she feared Rasheeda might see it as provocation. Rasheeda looked at her for a long time, then said that nothing was more provoking than finding her husband standing with Jasmine in the middle of the night. The words hit hard, and Jasmine blinked fast, trying not to show how much the tension rattled her. Before any of them could continue, a car passed by slowly, the driver recognizing them and pulling out a phone to record. The glow of the camera light snapped something inside Kirk. He stepped back, lowering his head and cursing under his breath. He told both women they needed to move somewhere else before the entire internet turned this moment into another wildfire. Rasheeda said there was no point running anymore. She said the truth was already here for everyone to see. She said she did not care who recorded, because she had nothing to hide. If anything, she said, this moment only confirmed what fans had been worried about for months. When she looked at Kirk again, the disappointment in her eyes made him look away. Jasmine started to apologize. She said she never wanted to hurt anyone. She said she understood how damaging this looked. She said she should have handled everything differently, but the apology did little to soften the tension. Rasheeda told her that every time the past seemed to be fading, something like this pulled everything back into the light. She said she was tired of defending her family from shadows that refused to leave. Jasmine swallowed the tears rising in her eyes. She said she did not want to be the shadow anymore. She said she was trying to rebuild her life, keep peace, and raise her child without stirring trouble. Kirk told Rasheeda again that nothing physical or emotional was happening between him and Jasmine. He said the meeting was short, unexpected, and nothing more, but the strain in his voice betrayed how cornered he felt. Rasheeda looked at him, searching for any piece of sincerity she could trust. She told him that trust was not something he could pick up and put down when convenient. She told him that every promise he made carried weight. And moments like this cracked the foundation she worked so hard to rebuild. More cars began to slow down as people recognized the trio. Whispers traveled through the parking lot. Fans are shocked became more than a phrase. People were stepping out of their cars, trying to get closer, trying to capture every second on camera. Emotions ran high among the small crowd forming on the sidelines. Someone shouted that this was going to go viral before dawn. Someone else said they never believed Kirk was fully done with Jasmine. The noise grew in volume, swirling around the three of them like rising smoke. Rasheeda turned her head toward the small crowd. She kept her voice steady as she asked Kirk if this was the moment he wanted the world to see. Kirk told her he wanted to leave. He said this was not the place to discuss anything. He said he would explain everything somewhere private, but Rasheeda did not move. She said she needed answers now because the moment she got in her car and drove home alone, the story would rearrange itself in her mind and she would fall apart before sunrise. Kirk reached for her hand, but she pulled back gently, not angrily, but firmly enough to make him pause. Jasmine stepped back a little, giving them space. She could feel the tension between them and knew she had no place in that exchange. Still, the eyes of the fans stayed locked on her as if she were the spark that ignited the entire scene. Some murmured that she should leave, others said she should stay and clear the air. Jasmine hugged her arms tighter and tried to remain still. She whispered that she never meant for this to spiral out of control. Rasheeda asked Kirk if there was anything he had not told her. Her voice stayed low, but the weight behind it pressed hard on him. He said no. He said he had been honest with her for a long time and he was not breaking that now. He said he understood why she doubted him. He said he understood why she felt betrayed by the sight of him standing with Jasmine at midnight. He said he was willing to do whatever it took to make things right. Rasheeda listened, her expression unreadable. Just then, someone from the small crowd shouted the word cheating with a loud and careless tone. It cut through the tension like a blade. Several phones lifted higher. The crowd pushed in a little. Jasmine stiffened. Kirk's face flooded with anger. He tried to hide. Rasheeda turned toward the direction of the voice, then turned back to Kirk. She asked him if that was what the world would think tomorrow. Kirk said people would think whatever the internet wanted them to think. He said their job was to keep the truth between them. Rasheeda pressed him again. Was this the truth? Was he hiding anything? Kirk raised his hand to his chest and said he was not. The moment stretched painfully. Jasmine whispered that she should leave. She said she was making things worse by standing there. Kirk told her to go home and stay off social media until they sorted everything out. She nodded slowly, then glanced at Rasheeda with a quiet apology before walking toward her car. Every step Jasmine took away from them drew new whispers from the crowd. Some people shouted questions at her, trying to grab her attention. She did not stop. She slid into her car and drove off, leaving Kirk and Rasheeda alone with the rising noise. When the car disappeared, Rasheeda turned back to Kirk. She asked him if he understood why this moment hurt more than the story itself. He nodded. He stepped closer again, slowly, giving her time to pull back if she wanted. She stayed still. Kirk told her he knew how fragile trust could be, and he knew he had not earned the right to make mistakes like this. He said he would explain everything, step by step, if she would give him a chance. Rasheeda looked at him, eyes bright with the weight of everything they had spent years repairing. The crowd kept recording. Voices kept rising. Cars slowed with people trying to figure out what was happening, but for a moment, the noise fell away for them. Kirk asked her quietly if she believed him. Rasheeda did not answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft and worn. She said she did not know. She said she wanted to believe him more than anything. But the picture of him standing with Jasmine at midnight would not leave her mind anytime soon. Kirk lowered his head, accepting the truth of her words. Before either of them could continue, 2 security guards from a nearby club approached the gathering. They told the crowd to move along and told Kirk and Rasheeda that the lot was closing soon. The interruption broke the moment into smaller pieces that neither of them knew how to gather back. Kirk asked Rasheeda to come with him so they could talk somewhere quiet. She hesitated, then finally nodded, not as forgiveness, but as a need for answers she could not walk away from. They turned toward their car together as the crowd continued recording every step. And right here, the story begins to twist in a direction none of them expected. The moment Kirk and Rasheeda moved toward the car, the tension did not ease. If anything, it thickened, twisting tighter with every step they took. The fans who remained in the parking lot whispered among themselves, snapping pictures and recording videos, their excitement almost palpable. Kirk opened the car door for Rasheeda, but she paused, letting the air linger between them for a few more seconds, as if she needed to measure the weight of the night before stepping inside. Kirk's hand hovered near hers, not touching, just ready to offer reassurance if she wanted it, and for a moment, the street felt quieter than it had been in years. He suggested they drive somewhere private, somewhere they could talk without the world watching. Rasheeda nodded slowly, her jaw tight, her fingers curling around the seatbelt as she buckled in. Kirk started the engine, the rumble of the car beneath them vibrating through the tense silence. The headlights cut through the dark streets, illuminating the empty sidewalks like theater lights on a stage where they were the only actors. Neither spoke immediately. Instead, they let the car move through the quiet city. The sound of tires on pavement, the only thing between them and the chaos left behind in the parking lot. The tension was thick, almost visible, a heavy weight pressing down on both of them. Kirk finally broke the silence. He said he wanted Rasheeda to know everything, every detail, because hiding things had only led them here. He said he did not want her to feel blindsided ever again. Rasheeda's eyes were fixed on the street ahead, but Kirk could see the storm behind them, the memories of past betrayals, the questions about the present, and the fear of future ones. He continued, explaining that Jasmine had reached out in panic over a rumor she had heard, claiming Kirk was planning something behind Rasheeda's back. Kirk insisted he had no plans, no intentions beyond clarity, but Jasmine had wanted him to meet her quietly, away from anyone who might misinterpret. Rasheeda listened quietly, the words soft but the weight behind them undeniable. She asked him why he had not called her first. Kirk admitted he should have, that he had misjudged the situation, that he thought a brief conversation with Jasmine would not escalate. Rasheeda's lips pressed together tightly. She said the problem was not only what happened but how it looked, how it could have destroyed the trust they had been rebuilding for years. Kirk nodded, acknowledging the truth in her words, feeling the gravity of the night settle deep in his chest. As they continued, Kirk tried to explain the chain of events that had led to the midnight meeting, a message misread, a rumor misunderstood, and a need for clarity that he had not thought through carefully. Rasheeda listened, her hands gripping the seat, the knots in her stomach reminding her that even the calmest explanations could not erase the shock of what she had seen. The car lights passed beneath street lamps, throwing shadows across their faces, highlighting every twitch, every blink, every tremble that betrayed the tension between them. Kirk kept his voice low but earnest, repeating that nothing had happened, that he had no hidden agenda, that the night's events were born from misunderstanding and panic. Rasheeda glanced at him sideways. She asked if he realized how this would appear to anyone who saw them. Kirk nodded again, agreeing that perception mattered as much as truth in moments like this. She asked how he expected her to believe him, and Kirk said he could not expect it, only offer it. The silence returned, dense and heavy. Outside, the city continued its quiet rhythm, unaware of the storm passing through a single car driving in the night. Rasheeda broke the quiet, asking about Jasmine's intentions. Kirk explained that Jasmine's anxiety had driven her, that she did not want drama. But she had acted impulsively, not realizing the consequences of reaching out at midnight. Rasheeda's eyes narrowed, considering every word, every angle, every possibility. Kirk said he had tried to manage the situation as best as he could, but he knew he had failed. Rasheeda's jaw tightened, and for a moment, the car felt like a cage. Kirk reached for her hand again, and she let him hold it, not fully, just enough to remind them both of what was at stake. They drove in silence a few more minutes, passing empty intersections. The city's quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos they had left behind. Kirk said he understood if she needed time, that trust could not be rebuilt overnight, and that he would wait. Rasheeda's grip on the seat loosened slightly, the tiniest acknowledgement of the hope she still carried. Kirk glanced at her, seeing the flicker of doubt mixed with lingering anger and fear. He said that he wanted to be transparent, that he wanted to prevent this kind of misunderstanding from ever happening again. Rasheeda asked him if he meant it. Kirk nodded firmly. "I do," he said. "No more secrets, no more missteps like tonight." She did not answer immediately. Instead, she stared out the window, watching the streetlights pass by like fleeting memories. Kirk waited, respecting her need to process. Finally, she spoke, her voice low but steady. She said she wanted reassurance, proof that this was the last time anything like this would happen. Kirk said he would give her both. Rasheeda's eyes softened ever so slightly. Kirk exhaled, the tension in his shoulders easing just a fraction. Outside, the city hummed with life, unaware of the drama playing out in one small car moving quietly through its streets. Kirk and Rasheeda continued to talk, slowly unraveling the layers of misunderstanding, fear, and hurt. Every question Rasheeda asked, every explanation Kirk offered, was another thread in the delicate fabric of trust they were trying to mend. Kirk admitted that mistakes had been made, not just tonight but in the past, and that each had left scars that were still healing. Rasheeda nodded, acknowledging the honesty but reminding him that words alone could not erase images burned into her mind. Kirk understood. He promised actions, accountability, and constant communication. The car passed a quiet park, shadows falling across the dashboard. The night heavy but moving. Rasheeda said she would try to believe him, but the past lingered like a shadow in the back seat. Kirk reached over, brushing a strand of hair from her face, and said that he would spend every day proving his commitment to her, to their family, and to the truth. Rasheeda glanced at him, her eyes softening yet still wary. Kirk exhaled slowly, realizing the road ahead would be long, filled with challenges, whispers, and lingering doubts. Rasheeda said nothing, simply looking ahead, letting the weight of the moment settle. Kirk kept speaking, his voice steady, explaining every misstep, every misjudged intention, every small choice that had led to this confrontation. Rasheeda listened, her face unreadable but attentive, knowing that these words, these moments, mattered more than any public perception. Kirk paused, realizing the conversation was far from over, that every explanation might not erase the visual of that midnight encounter. Rasheeda's hand brushed briefly against his, a gesture small but significant, signaling a tentative willingness to navigate the aftermath together. Outside, the city continued its quiet rhythm, unaware that inside a single car, trust, betrayal, and the delicate threads of a relationship hung by a whisper, a look, and the promise of action. Kirk and Rasheeda drove on, the night stretching ahead, both knowing the hardest part was not the confrontation itself, but the lingering questions that would haunt the coming days. Kirk and Rasheeda continued driving through the quiet streets, the tension inside the car thick enough to almost taste. Outside, the world went on oblivious to the storm contained within four doors and a windshield. Kirk kept his eyes on the road, but his mind replayed every word, every glance, every heartbeat from the parking lot confrontation. Rasheeda sat silently, her fingers tapping against her thigh. Each movement measured, deliberate, betraying the whirlwind of thoughts racing through her mind. She thought about the rumors, the whispers, the fans' reactions, and most importantly, the way Kirk had looked, standing next to Jasmine at midnight. His body language hinting at secrecy, even if he insisted otherwise. The car seemed to carry them into a bubble of reality and fear. One where nothing outside mattered except the fragile thread of truth they were trying to hold on to. Kirk broke the silence first, his voice low, careful, almost hesitant. He reminded her that the midnight meeting had been a response to panic, a desperate attempt to clarify misunderstandings before they spiraled. He admitted that his timing was poor, that his judgment had failed, and that he had underestimated the power of perception. Rasheeda nodded slightly, her eyes on the passing streetlights, but the shadow behind them remained. She said she wanted transparency, complete honesty, and no more meetings that could be misinterpreted. Kirk promised. He swore he would communicate every step moving forward, no matter how trivial it seemed. He explained that Jasmine had reached out in a panic, believing she had uncovered a threat to the family's peace. Kirk tried to calm her, assure her nothing existed, but she insisted on speaking, and he had thought meeting her privately was safer than allowing speculation to spread. Rasheeda's lips pressed together tightly. She asked how he could justify the secrecy and why he had not called her first. Kirk admitted that it was a mistake, a lapse in judgment, and one he regretted deeply. He wanted her to understand that intentions alone did not erase appearances. But he had not anticipated the depth of the hurt it would cause. She stayed quiet, processing, weighing each word, each nuance, deciding whether to trust the explanation or let suspicion fester. Kirk glanced at her, seeing the pain, the doubt, the frustration, and felt a heavy weight in his chest. He knew he had put her in a position where even the truth seemed suspect. He tried again, this time with more earnestness, explaining the sequence of events that led to the midnight meeting, the rumor that sparked panic, Jasmine's anxiety, the misreading of messages, and his misguided attempt at resolution. Rasheeda listened, her hands folded in her lap, her face an unreadable mask, yet Kirk could feel her mind racing. She asked if he realized how this would appear to anyone witnessing it, how the internet could tear them apart before explanations reached her ears. Kirk nodded, acknowledging the fragility of public perception. He said that he could not control what others thought but that he could control his actions and words moving forward. Rasheeda pressed further, demanding reassurance that this would be the last time secrecy undermined trust. Kirk promised, swearing that transparency would be his guide, that honesty would be non-negotiable, and that no meeting, no conversation, no detail would ever be hidden again. The car moved silently for several blocks, the weight of the night pressing on both of them. Rasheeda finally spoke, her voice low but steady, expressing the mix of anger, disappointment, and lingering love that tangled inside her. Kirk listened intently, knowing that no apology alone could repair the damage but hoping that his words, actions, and commitment could begin to mend what had been strained. She asked if he understood the depth of betrayal she felt. The way seeing him with Jasmine had stirred memories of past missteps, old wounds that never fully healed. Kirk admitted that he did, that he recognized the pain, and that he would spend every day proving that he could be trusted. Rasheeda's eyes softened fractionally, the first hint of fragile hope breaking through her armor. Kirk reached over, brushing a strand of hair from her face. A small gesture of care, of connection, grounding them both amidst the chaos. She allowed the touch, not fully, but enough to signal that the conversation was not hopeless. Outside, the city lights flickered past, shadows painting their faces with fleeting impressions of vulnerability, sincerity, and the delicate balance between love and doubt. Kirk spoke again, recounting every step of the interaction with Jasmine, the intentions behind each word, the urgency that had driven him, and the panic that had compelled her to reach out. Rasheeda listened, her fingers curling around the edge of her seat, absorbing the explanations, weighing the truth, and assessing Kirk's sincerity. Kirk assured her that nothing had happened beyond the conversation, that no emotion had crossed into betrayal, and that every boundary had been maintained, even under stress. Rasheeda asked about Jasmine's motives, and Kirk explained that her anxiety, fueled by rumors, had dictated her actions, and that the midnight meeting had been an attempt at clarity, not seduction, not manipulation. Rasheeda remained silent for a long moment, her mind navigating the labyrinth of doubt and desire to believe. Kirk repeated that he understood the fragility of trust and that he would act with complete honesty moving forward. She finally responded, asking how he planned to prove it beyond words. Kirk said he would be transparent in every communication, share intentions before actions, and involve her in decisions that might affect the family or their peace. Rasheeda's hand brushed against his briefly, a gesture that spoke volumes of the tentative truce being formed. Kirk felt a small, cautious relief, realizing that rebuilding trust would require patience, consistent honesty, and careful attention to perception. The night stretched on as the car continued through empty streets. Rasheeda looked out the window, the quiet hum of tires on pavement providing a rhythm for reflection. Kirk drove, occasionally glancing at her. Understanding that the unspoken emotions, the fear, disappointment, lingering suspicion were as significant as any verbal exchange. Rasheeda finally broke the silence again, asking what Kirk intended to do about the public perception. About fans seeing the scene and speculating wildly. Kirk said he could not control everyone, but he could manage the narrative through transparency, accountability, and openness with her. Rasheeda nodded slowly, acknowledging the effort but reminding him that perception would always linger as a shadow. Unless actions consistently proved trustworthiness. Kirk promised action, consistency, and patience. Rasheeda's jaw relaxed fractionally, the tension ebbing just enough to suggest that a tentative path forward existed. They continued driving, their conversation deepening into strategy, reflection, and mutual acknowledgement of mistakes, both past and present. Kirk admitted that patterns of secrecy had plagued them before. That he had failed in times that seemed minor then but were magnified by circumstances now. Rasheeda absorbed the admission, understanding that rebuilding trust required acknowledgement, sincerity, and visible change. Kirk pledged that every step moving forward would be transparent, deliberate, and open. Rasheeda asked if he realized how easily moments like tonight could be misinterpreted and how easily relationships could fracture when communication faltered. Kirk nodded, agreeing wholeheartedly. The city passed silently around them, unaware of the private storm navigating the vehicle. Finally, after miles of quiet reflection and measured conversation, Rasheeda spoke, her voice softening, saying she wanted to believe him, wanted to hold on to the fragile hope that honesty could outweigh past mistakes. Kirk nodded, feeling both relief and the weight of responsibility. He reached for her hand again, and she allowed it. The tentative touch signaling a small victory, a fragile bridge forming over a chasm of doubt. Outside, the night remained calm, yet within the car, emotions churned. Negotiations of trust and transparency unfolding. Every word, a careful step toward reconciliation. Every glance a measure of faith being rebuilt. The car continued its slow glide through the quiet streets, the glow of streetlights casting long shadows across Kirk and Rasheeda's faces. Each mile seemed to stretch the tension taut, yet it also allowed space for reflection. A chance for them to untangle the mess of the night. Kirk kept glancing at Rasheeda, seeing the mixture of anger, hurt, and cautious hope in her eyes. He knew this was a delicate moment, one that could easily tip back into mistrust if he missed. He spoke softly, recounting not just the events of the midnight encounter, but the larger context, the patterns of communication failures, the misunderstandings that had accumulated over time. Rasheeda listened, her fingers tracing the seam of the car seat, her expression guarded but attentive. Kirk explained how he had intended nothing but clarity, how Jasmine's panic had forced a rushed decision, how he had underestimated the power of perception, and how every misstep had compounded the stress between them. Rasheeda let out a slow breath, acknowledging the explanation but reminding him that intent alone did not undo the images etched into her mind. Kirk and Jasmine standing together at midnight, whispers carried by the night air, the world watching without restraint. Kirk nodded, accepting the gravity of that image. Understanding that repairing trust was not a matter of words but of consistent, observable actions, he promised transparency, that every message, every decision, every interaction would be shared and discussed openly, leaving no room for shadows to grow. Rasheeda considered his promise, weighing it against the history of secrecy that had so often undermined their relationship. She spoke, asking how he intended to handle public perception. The inevitable speculation, the fans and the media that would latch onto the smallest fragment of the night. Kirk said he could not control what others thought, only how he acted, how he communicated, and how he prioritized honesty and openness in their marriage. Rasheeda's hand brushed briefly against his, a gesture of acknowledgement. Tentative trust forming amid the ruins of doubt. Kirk continued, detailing steps he would take, involving Rasheeda in all decisions that could affect their family, providing context before any conversation that might seem suspicious, and ensuring that even minor interactions were transparent. Rasheeda absorbed the plan, realizing that the path forward would require patience and consistent proof, not just promises. The silence settled over them again, punctuated by the gentle hum of tires on pavement, the occasional distant car passing by, and the quiet rush of night air through slightly cracked windows. Kirk asked Rasheeda if she understood that his intention was never to deceive, never to hide, and that the midnight meeting had been an attempt to prevent misunderstandings, not create them. Rasheeda nodded slowly, her eyes reflecting the streetlights and the internal debate of whether to accept his explanation fully. Kirk reached over, gently touching her hand again, a small steadying gesture, an unspoken plea for trust and connection. She allowed it, not fully relaxed but enough to indicate a willingness to navigate the aftermath together. Kirk's voice lowered further, admitting that mistakes had been made not just tonight but in the past, that patterns of secrecy had eroded confidence, and that rebuilding trust would require deliberate, continuous effort. Rasheeda's gaze softened slightly. The first real sign that the conversation was beginning to bridge the distance the midnight encounter had created. Kirk continued, explaining every choice, every misjudgment, every well-intentioned action that had inadvertently sown doubt. Rasheeda listened, weighing each word, processing the balance between past disappointments and present assurances. She asked what steps he would take to ensure nothing like this ever happened again, and Kirk detailed a plan: complete openness, immediate communication, proactive inclusion, and a commitment to never allow situations to escalate into secrecy or misinterpretation. The night pressed on, the cityscape moving past them. The quiet of empty streets, a stark contrast to the chaos left behind in the parking lot. Kirk and Rasheeda spoke in hushed tones, exploring the emotional terrain laid bare by the midnight confrontation. Each sentence a careful negotiation, each glance a check on sincerity and intention. Kirk emphasized that he understood the fragility of their trust, that he recognized how easily past patterns could resurface, and that he was prepared to do the work required to rebuild what had been shaken. Rasheeda's responses were measured, reflective, signaling cautious hope rather than full reconciliation, acknowledging that while explanations were necessary, proof over time would be the true measure of restoration. Kirk's hand found hers once more, a tentative, grounding connection, a silent promise that actions would soon align with words. The car wound through the night, and with each passing block, the conversation deepened, covering everything from the immediate misunderstanding to broader concerns about communication, transparency, and emotional safety. Kirk assured her that he would never again allow panic, rumor, or anxiety to dictate secrecy. Rasheeda pressed for details, questioning how future interactions would be managed to prevent any recurrence. Kirk answered patiently, outlining a proactive approach to all relationships, emphasizing clarity, honesty, and inclusion. The silence returned, a quiet pause of reflection, each absorbing the magnitude of the night and the fragile reconciliation forming within the vehicle. Kirk finally said that the night, though chaotic, had exposed vulnerabilities they needed to confront, and that the experience, painful as it was, could serve as a turning point if handled with care and commitment. Rasheeda listened, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly, signaling that the foundation for dialogue, understanding, and eventual healing was being laid. Outside, the city remained unaware of the personal storm unfolding in the car. The interplay of guilt, honesty, trust, and the painstaking effort to repair what had been momentarily shattered. Kirk and Rasheeda continued, mile after mile, word by word, heartbeat by heartbeat, navigating the treacherous waters of suspicion, intention, and the public eye. Kirk spoke again, assuring her that nothing, no meeting, no conversation, no external influence, would ever compromise the transparency they were establishing now. Rasheeda considered each word, each gesture, each expression, understanding that reconciliation would be measured not by promises alone but by persistent, consistent action. The hum of the engine, the passing streetlights, and the stillness of the night provided a quiet backdrop to their dialogue, a contrast to the frenzy that had erupted hours earlier. Kirk repeated that he understood the weight of the images from the parking lot, the whispers of fans, and the fragility of perception, emphasizing that his commitment to her and their family would outweigh any external pressures. Rasheeda's hand remained within reach, a tentative signal that though trust had been strained, willingness to believe and move forward existed. Kirk exhaled slowly, acknowledging the gravity of the task ahead, the work required to rebuild trust fully, and the vigilance necessary to prevent similar situations from arising. The car glided through the city, and with each passing block, a small, fragile understanding formed between them, the groundwork for healing, accountability, and restored faith in each other taking root amidst the stillness of the night. Kirk concluded by stating that transparency would be absolute, that every interaction would be visible, every action accounted for, and every decision shared. Rasheeda's eyes reflected the streetlights, her mind considering, analyzing, and cautiously accepting the framework he laid before her. The night stretched onward, silent witnesses passing by unaware, while inside the car, two people navigated the delicate balance between hurt, intention, and the painstaking reconstruction of trust. Every mile, every word, every glance was part of a delicate choreography, one that required patience, sincerity, and consistent proof that love, despite the missteps, could withstand the scrutiny of night, rumor, and the undeniable power of perception. As the night finally began to fade into the soft glow of early dawn, the weight of what had happened still lingered heavily in the air. Kirk and Rasheeda had driven miles through quiet streets, spoken in measured tones, and navigated the storm of mistrust, doubt, and raw emotion that had erupted in the parking lot just hours earlier. The world outside had remained oblivious, yet inside their car, every glance, every word, every pause had carried the intensity of years of unresolved tension. Fans are shocked by the images, the whispers, the late-night encounter that now threatened to redefine perceptions, friendships, and even family bonds. Emotions ran high, not just for Kirk and Rasheeda, but for everyone who had witnessed snippets of the chaos unfold online. The story had spread, and rumors had ignited, leaving the family divided in the court of public opinion. And yet, here, they were, cautiously walking the tightrope between betrayal and reconciliation, trying to rebuild trust one conversation at a time. Kirk had promised transparency, accountability, and complete honesty, while Rasheeda had demanded proof through actions, not just words. The air was still tense, yet beneath it, a fragile thread of hope had begun to form. The night had revealed vulnerabilities, exposed fears, and demanded confrontations that could no longer be ignored. They had faced the truth together, albeit reluctantly, acknowledging that missteps, rumors, and misunderstandings had the power to ignite storms that even love alone could not immediately calm. And now, as the first hints of morning light brushed the horizon, there was a sense of reckoning, a quiet acknowledgement that the journey ahead would be difficult, filled with scrutiny, whispers, and lingering doubts. Yet, it was a journey they had to take if trust was to be restored. Rasheeda's heart still thumped with the echoes of what she had seen and heard. The midnight encounter that had stirred fears she had hoped were long buried. Kirk understood that every action from this point forward would be a test, every choice a measure of his commitment, and every word a building block for the fragile trust they were trying to reconstruct. Fans are shocked, and the media frenzy had only amplified the stakes, leaving no room for mistakes. Every step, every glance, every carefully measured word mattered. Kirk knew that transparency alone was not enough. Consistent demonstration of honesty, openness, and respect for Rasheeda's perspective would be essential. They had navigated one night of chaos, but the aftermath of public scrutiny, the lingering questions, the judgment of friends, family, and fans would demand patience, strategy, and unyielding commitment. Yet, amidst the tension, a small, fragile hope lingered, like the first faint rays of sunlight breaking through a stormy sky. Rasheeda had allowed herself to believe, if only tentatively, that the truth could prevail, that Kirk's promises were sincere, and that their bond, though tested, could endure. Kirk, aware of the road ahead, accepted the responsibility of rebuilding trust with humility, dedication, and unwavering focus. He knew that every interaction with Rasheeda, every choice made in public and private, would now carry weight far beyond their personal understanding. And as the city awoke, fans continued to comment, speculate, and react online, each opinion another reminder that their lives had become a spectacle, a narrative shaped by perception, rumor, and sensationalism. Kirk and Rasheeda had survived one night of confrontation, one night that could have shattered what remained of their fragile understanding, but the work was far from over. They would have to confront past patterns, address insecurities, and navigate the relentless gaze of a public invested in drama and scandal. Yet, within the car, in the quiet moments between conversations, there was a tentative promise, a delicate understanding that actions would speak louder than rumors, that truth would eventually rise above speculation, and that commitment, when genuine, could withstand even the most public of storms. And now, as the story of Kirk and Jasmine's midnight encounter continues to circulate, questions remain. Will trust be fully restored? Will Rasheeda forgive completely? Can Kirk prove, beyond words, that honesty will always guide him? The answers are still unfolding, the chapters unwritten, and the audience is left to witness, speculate, and weigh in on what comes next. So now, it's your turn. What do you think happened behind the closed doors of that midnight encounter? Do you believe Kirk's explanation and his promises of transparency? Or do you think the trust between him and Rasheeda has been irreparably damaged? Comment below and let us know your thoughts because your opinion matters. Make sure you like this video if you enjoyed the drama. Subscribe to our channel to stay updated on every shocking twist. and hit the notification bell so you never miss a moment of the unfolding story. Fans are shocked, emotions ran high, and the family was left divided, but you get to be part of the conversation. To weigh in, and to decide who you trust, who you believe, and what you think should happen next. Share this video with friends, discuss it, debate it, and keep the conversation alive. The night was chaotic, the confrontation intense, and the aftermath uncertain, but your voice can be part of the story. So comment, like, subscribe, and stay tuned because the drama is far from over, and every twist, every revelation, every heated exchange is just the beginning of a story that will keep everyone talking. Remember, in a world of secrets, rumors, and midnight encounters, clarity is rare, trust is fragile, and your perspective is part of the unfolding narrative. So join the conversation, let your voice be heard, and be ready for the next chapter of Kirk, Rasheeda, and the shocking midnight revelation that has everyone talking.